What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And free agency has continued. The New York Giants had a pretty quiet day yesterday outside of the Javon Holland signing, but today we are expecting some more news in the afternoon. Of course, it's the start of the new league year at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when all of these contracts that the Giants have agreed to can become official. And also with the start of the new league year will come a lot of releases, some contract restructurings across the NFL. A lot of that kind of stuff gets done later on today, and that could help push the domino to fall over, which is, of course, the quarterback that the New York Giants still have not signed. They're waiting for an answer from Aaron Rodgers. He's deciding between the Steelers and the Giants, and I even saw a random report today that possibly he's also deciding between retirement. So I don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if you even saw that, Alex, but I saw somebody post that he's maybe also considering retirement. I don't know. Don't want to spend too much time on that because at any moment, Rodgers could just sign somewhere and then this entire episode just kind of ages into extinction. So we want to talk about the right guard position and why the New York Giants haven't necessarily addressed that just yet, but how they still can and take a look at some of their top options. But also want to react to the New York Giants receiving a third-round compensatory pick for Xavier McKinney. Now, this is kind of huge. I have a few big takeaways from this, Alex, and I really want to hear your take on it as well. But I want to say this initially. I think the NFL just took some pity on the Giants. Every single website, every single calculator, every single formula had the New York Giants getting a fourth-round comp pick for Xavier McKinney. How they ended up with the number 99 overall pick is beyond me. I think it might have been a little bit of pity, and I am not complaining at all. The New York Giants had a really rough 2024 season. They watched superstars walk out of the door and become even bigger superstars elsewhere. We can use all the help we can get. I'm loving the fact that the Giants landed an extra top 100 draft pick. But now what can the New York Giants do with that draft pick? That's what we want to discuss briefly before we talk about some of these right guards, and in fact, those two topics might mesh over in some way. But I also have an alternative idea that I'm going to pitch to you in a moment here, Alex, about that number 99 overall pick. But first and foremost, I want to know, how are you doing today? And also, what is your take on the New York Giants landing a third-round comp pick?
Doing pretty good. And listen, yeah, we didn't expect that. And having, I think it's the 99th overall selection, is pretty solid. I mean, this draft class is strong in a couple different areas, right? And if the Giants were going to try to trade up to first overall, which I'm by the day I'm becoming more and more pessimistic about, because it seems that all the hype and narrative is that the Titans are going to take Cam Ward, unless they could be trying to build that interest up to force a team like the Giants to swing big and give up more than they intended. They could use that third round pick or a third round pick as part of a package, as part of a haul, and still maintain one of those selections. So it does give you a little bit more assurance that, like, okay, we can give one of those third round picks up and we still got one. So I do think in that sense, yeah, it does make sense. And another thing you could think of, Anthony, is, well, what if the Giants saw a player they really liked in the top of the second round and they packaged those third round picks up together to go up and get that player? Last year you would have prayed that they had a comp pick like this to go up and get a guy like Cooper DeJean, or whoever, or Kamari Lassiter. Like, they missed out on all those top guys. And they're with Tyler Nubin, of course, and I think he's a good player, but they wanted a cornerback and they missed out on a couple of them. So you never know how that extra draft capital can serve you right, can serve you in a productive way. And this is a draft class where it's a deep DT draft class. There's some decent receivers in the mid rounds. There's depth on the offensive line. I'm just really talking about LeJonte Wester here in the third round. So not decent receivers, just my LeJonte Wester. But offensive line, there's some athletic guards and stuff you could probably sneak a selection in. So, there's definitely some stronger positions, and maybe the Giants can use that unforeseen kind of draft selection they just got and unpredicted, kind of 99th overall pick. There's some value there they can actually utilize to address one of those spots.
Yeah, they absolutely can. Listen, they can stick and pick with that. They can trade up with that pick, but I also have an alternative idea that I hinted at earlier in the episode that I want to pitch to you, Alex. And this is more based not on what I would do, but just kind of on the trends of the last couple of years here as we've studied what Joe Schoen has done to this roster. But also he has made some good moves that we have commended. And one of the things that he likes to do, a strategy that he loves to utilize seemingly every offseason, he likes to make some sort of a trade. Now, whether that's a trade up to the number one pick, as you mentioned, and I'll add this detail, the perceived notion is that if there is a trade for the number one pick, the Titans want X amount of top 100 picks. They only have 2 picks in the top 100 in this year's draft, being number 1 overall, and I think their third round pick, is it? I don't think they're picking in the second for some reason, but they only have 2 picks in the top 100. Meanwhile, the New York Giants have 4 picks in the top 100. So if the mission here for the Titans is to gain more top 100 draft capital, well, the New York Giants now have even more of that to hand off to them and say, hey, move down those 2 spots, take somebody else, and let us take our quarterback. So that's part of it. But the other part of it is this, Alex. In the 2023 offseason, the New York Giants traded for Darren Waller. Now, they traded a third-round pick to acquire Darren Waller. Why did they do that? They had 2 third-round picks at their disposal. So they took one of those third-round picks, utilized it in that draft, and they took another one of those third-round picks and utilized it to trade for a veteran who could immediately make an impact for them. That's a pretty interesting strategy, a pretty good one as well. It was great in theory, didn't work out in execution because Darren Waller couldn't stay on the field and then abruptly retired to pursue a music career. However, I still did like the idea here and the strategy. Then he did it once again in 2024. The New York Giants had 2 second-round picks. They had their own, and then they had the Seattle Seahawks second-round pick that they acquired via trade for Leonard Williams. So what did they do? They figured, okay, we're going to use one of those second-round picks. We're going to hold on to it. The other one, let's trade it for a veteran player who can make an immediate impact. That player ended up being Brian Burns. So now that the New York Giants are into a third offseason in a row where they have double picks in a round inside the top 100, I absolutely could see them taking one of these 2 third-round picks, trading it off for a veteran elsewhere in the league, and that actually could be the way that the New York Giants solve their right guard position, which we're about to talk about. So I wanted to throw that theory out there. I guess it's just theory for now, but just looking at the recent trends of what Joe Schoen has done in recent years, I think there's a lot of reason to believe that that additional draft pick could spark a potential trade for a veteran around the league, or of course it could spark a trade up, or he could stick and pick with it, get an additional top 100 prospect. All of these options are great, and that's why I'm really excited about the fact that the New York Giants lucked into the number 99 overall selection.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, if they found a team with a player that maybe is a little too overpriced for their taste right now, but the Giants had the money, and they do, to go and get a guard or maybe find somebody else. Yeah, they could leverage that third round pick to try and pry them away. I mean, we just saw the Houston Texans trade Laramie Tunsil, you know what I mean, to the Commanders. So you never know who's kind of waiting. And it's kind of interesting because a couple of teams they had spoke to didn't even want Tunsil. Maybe injury related, who knows? But we'll see if that bodes well for the Commanders and kind of how his outlook is moving forward. And then they also traded Kenyon Green, right, to the Eagles, I believe.
And they cut Shaq Mason, who I want to talk about in this episode, a potential target for the Giants.
Absolutely. So, you know, there are some guards left. Obviously, the Giants missed out on Will Fries, and he signed an almost $18 million deal with the Vikings, I believe, was it? So, you know, this is an interesting guard class because, look, Will Fries, I wanted him for sure. But there's nothing about Will Fries that was proven yet. He had a really solid 200 snaps before missing the rest of the year last season. Like that's what he's being signed off of, the upside and potential. He's really young and he has that potential, but he's not a proven guard like that. Like he's not a proven high tier 1 guard. He got paid based on upside. That's where we are in the cycle of free agents right now. However, you know, one of your guys, Anthony, Tevin Jenkins, experienced at both left guard and right guard, and has, you know, been pretty solid the last couple seasons. You know, is that the guy that's number 1 on your list? I know the Giants are definitely probably poking around there. They're definitely considering him as an option. I think they're just trying to figure out, can they outbid the other teams for him? Because he's going to cost maybe in that same range, to be honest.
Well, I in the same range as Will Fries? I don't think he comes anywhere close to that personally. No, because his injury history is pretty significant, which is something that I warned about, you know, when I discussed Tevin Jenkins in my Blueprint episode. Well, he had the one injury. Tevin Jenkins has been hurt every single season of his career, which is why I know there are a lot of Giants fans who don't want him. Me personally, he is number 1 on my target list and has been, because I think that injury history allows you to come in at a relatively affordable asking price, you know, whereas other guards of his talent and caliber get signed on those contracts that Will Fries just signed, where they reach closer to $20 million than they do to $10 million. But because of Tevin Jenkins' injury history, you're getting a talent that's worth that 20 million for closer to 10. And that's where I think he comes in. I know his projected market value to PFF or wherever I think is around 13 million. I think he comes in closer to that than he does to Will Fries' 17 or 18. In fact, I could see him coming in lower than that due to the fact that free agency is already through its high gear here. We're through the second wave, almost entering the third wave now of free agency. And Tevin Jenkins is still unsigned. He's like the only premier guard entering free agency that's still available, and there has to be a reason for that. So, number one, I think one of the reasons being that injury history. Number two, I think being the New York Giants are waiting to get an answer from Aaron Rodgers. I think that if they miss out on Aaron Rodgers, they might spend more at guard because their pivot is likely Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is going to cost presumably a little bit less than Aaron Rodgers, allowing them to afford a Tevin Jenkins or someone in that higher end of the market. However, if they land Aaron Rodgers, they've just spent a little bit more at quarterback. Maybe they don't go for a Tevin Jenkins. Maybe they go for somebody who is a little bit cheaper. So, but yeah, to explain why I like Tevin Jenkins so much, yes, the injury history is a concern and it is a little bit of a problem, but you know what you're getting when you pay for him. You know that he's going to be injured. So you have to hedge your bet and also add a little bit of depth at guard, which theoretically could be Evan Neal for the New York Giants. And so you kind of already have that built-in guard presence here. You've gotten by in the past somewhat with the offensive linemen that you've had as depth pieces before with Evan Neal on the field. Evan Neal did start a playoff game for the New York Giants, just to say it bluntly. So maybe you move forward with that as your backup plan, or you add a guard in the third round, like we just mentioned. But I like Tevin Jenkins because he has positional versatility. He could play right guard and left guard, which I think is really crucial for this team that suffers a lot of injuries on the offensive line. And I think he's one of the most technically sound guards in the NFL when he's healthy, of course, and on the field. Plus, he's an absolute mauler in the running game. And I think the New York Giants' run blocking was absolutely atrocious this past season. I felt really bad for Tyrone Tracy because I think that kid has a lot of talent, and I think he demonstrated a good amount of it. And I think with a better offensive line in front of him, he easily could have been a 1,000-yard rusher. But that opportunity really just wasn't afforded to him with how bad the Giants' offensive line was in front of him. So I think there's a lot to like about Tevin Jenkins. Obviously, there's other options that we're going to mention, but Alex, I am curious, where do you stand with Tevin Jenkins? I think he's a little bit of a polarizing figure for Giants fans due to his injury history, but I'm looking at the talent. I'm knowing what I'm buying into when I'm signing him. I'm saying I understand he's probably going to miss some games, but when he's on the field, he's going to be one of our most impactful players on offense, so sign me up for that personally.
I mean, listen, I'll ask you this. How many teams would pay a whole dollar, a lot of money, a lot of capital to acquire Andrew Thomas right now? Probably
That's
a couple.
A great point.
You know what I mean?
That's a really good counterpoint.
A lot of good quality offensive linemen are hard to find these days. And I'll say this, Will Fries has 1 year of healthy football. He played 1 year where he had 1,100 snaps in 2023. Before that, he had never played over 650. So, then he played 268 last year. So, he's a gamble. I would not be surprised if Tevin Jenkins was in that same realm, or even 16 to 18 realm. Just based on look, he's played over 700 snaps in consecutive years. He's going to miss a little bit of time, but this is what I would do, Anthony. And I think it's centered around, I think they're on the right track here with the offensive line. I think they're heading in the right direction, but this is what I would do. I would cut your losses and I would cut Josh Zedu today. I would cut Josh. I just don't think he's worth investing more time in. Evan Neal, he is a backup. That is it, right? What I would do is cut Josh Zedu. I would bring back Greg Van Roten on a minimum deal to be a depth piece, and I would sign Tevin Jenkins, and I would draft an offensive lineman. I don't know where. Maybe it's BPA, it's second, third, fourth round. I don't know. But I would take an offensive lineman at some point in this draft. A guy that Carmen Priscilla believes he can develop. And that way, you have a starting unit that, on paper is a lot better, right? You have Andrew Thomas, you got John Runyon. JMS, we need him to be better. And Tevin Jenkins, yeah, he's going to miss time, but at least you have a starter next to JMS who is going to be a legit starter, not some Greg Van Roten stopgap. He is a legitimate starter. And then Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. That's a very, on paper, 5, that's solid. Behind them, you have Greg Van Roten, who we know can step in and start games at multiple spots. We have Evan Neal, can start at right tackle if need be, and is going to be cross-training at right guard. And you draft a guy in the whatever rounds as a developmental piece. He's a worst case scenario, but at least you drafted him and you know that you have conviction in this player. That is how I would go about this. You have you have legit talent across the board. You have a lot of investment in this position, money and draft capital, and you have backup plans at each spot, right? And they just signed James Hudson as well, so you have him too. So I do think that is how you you structure this offensive line to have legitimate players and pieces there, but also backups and developmental pieces that like can assume that role, can develop into starting jobs. But you don't have to rush them. How many times do the Giants draft guys in the mid to late rounds and are like, yeah, buddy, you're starting today. And it's like, I don't even know how to play the game yet. Like that's what the Giants have been doing the last couple of years, right? Like how many times do we see Marcus McKethan starting games? He should never have been starting games that early in his career. He's no longer on the Giants, right? Like you see guys, Azidu, they've been throwing that guy at position to see if he's stuck for years. He's just not that good of a football player, unfortunately. I like him. Good dude. Just not that good at football. So like it's just the reality of the situation. I'm cutting bad investments from the past and I'm replacing them with productive investments for the future and present. That's kind of how I would go about structuring it right now.
Listen, everything that you just said right there, that's exactly what I've been thinking. That's exactly what I want to see the New York Giants do. That's why Tevin Jenkins makes so much sense to me, because I know a lot of people say, oh, the Giants don't have any offensive line depth. Well, they've been working on that. They added another depth piece at right tackle today. John Scythe, something, I don't know. Seahawks guy. He's not that good. He's going to be a backup, so we're not going to talk too much about him. But they have been adding depth on the offensive line, and I think now Evan Neal can be a kind of very solid depth piece for you. Plus, they've got a good amount of draft capital. Plus, we know that Greg Van Roten is open to returning on a one-year deal later in the offseason. So I think there are many ways where they can hedge their bets with a potential Tevin Jenkins signing. Plus, when he's healthy, same as Andrew Thomas, like you said, Alex, he's one of the best players at his position that you sign up for, I think, every single time. So I really like Tevin Jenkins. I do absolutely think that he should be top target for the New York Giants. And from there, we'll see what else happens. But, let's talk about some of these other targets that they could take a look at, Alex. And, I think Mekhi Becton is one that I want to get your take on. There are some Giants fans who are really intrigued by the idea of Mekhi Becton. Obviously, he's an oversized guard, came into the NFL as a tackle, had to move inside to guard because he didn't cut it at offensive tackle. And as a result, went over to the Philadelphia Eagles and had the greatest season of his career and turned into a legitimate starter. However, he is still sitting out there on free agency. And as you mentioned, the Kenyon Green trade was to the Eagles. They just added a guard. So potentially, they're going to let Mekhi Becton walk. Here's my thing on Mekhi Becton, Alex. If the Eagles are willingly letting him walk and replacing him, that's a red flag. Certain teams that let players go, you have to pause and think, why is that team of all teams that's known for developing talent, known for keeping their best talent, why are they letting that player leave willingly in free agency? And that gives me pause. And as a New York Giants fan who has watched this team tear apart talent on the offensive line and struggle to develop them, for a player who's still developing in Mekhi Becton, I don't know if we are the best fit for him. Therefore, I personally wouldn't be too crazy about that signing. Even though the upside is there, the New York Giants shouldn't be taking upside free agency swings on the offensive line right now, in my opinion. They should be going for some more proven commodities, some guys who can step in, plug and play, and when healthy, be really, really good for you. So that's kind of my whole take on Mekhi Becton, Alex, but I am curious to hear what you think about that, and also if you think the same as me. If the Eagles or another team like that, that's so good at finding talent, lets a talent walk, does that also give you pause?
Let me give you the perfect way to say this. When the Giants let players go, you scoop them up immediately. When the Eagles let players go, you avoid them at all costs because they've gotten the most value from them. But when Giants let players go, the Giants have gotten no value from them, and there is value left to be extracted. That's just the way it is right now for us, but hoping that changes long term. I don't want anything to do with Mekhi Becton because he played in a system that relied on the run and Saquon Barkley, and he's a great run blocker, but the Giants need to pass the football. Brian Dable's offense has always been relying on the passing game. I like Tyrone Tracy, but he's not Saquon Barkley. You know what I mean? Like this is a totally different offense. They need to get a good pass protector and a good run blocker, like a guy that has a balance into his game. Mekhi Becton was a great run blocker, solid pass protector, but not great. I think that, he's oversized. He's a bit slow. I just don't look, if they let him go, that means they got the most value they think they could get out of a guy like that. And I don't want to find out how much worse he could be for a team that doesn't know really how to coach offensive linemen yet. I'll give Carmen Brazil the benefit of the doubt because he just took over and he had 1 year and it was like injury galore again. But I don't want to be the guinea pig for that experiment.
I don't think you're wrong in feeling that way. In fact, I feel similarly. So Next option that I want to discuss, Alex, Kevin Zeitler. Could the reunion happen? And you know what? Let's do a 2-for-1 here. Two potential reunions, Kevin Zeitler and Will Hernandez. Now, I prefer Will Hernandez because he's a little bit younger than Kevin Zeitler. I think Kevin Zeitler is going to be 35 this year, so he's old. He's a definite 1-year deal. You're expecting him to play out that contract, and then he's gone. So I think that with Will Hernandez, there's a little bit more upside. He's 29, so maybe it's a 2-year deal. Maybe you can have him play, into 2026, but have it be a low guarantee contract so you can cut him after this year if possible. That's just kind of my line of thinking with a Hernandez versus Zeitler. Although I will say Kevin Zeitler is clearly the better player. He's super experienced. He's been here with the Giants before. He knows the market. So I think that there's a lot of pros to both of these guys. I don't think there's really all that many cons with either of them. I think that both of them would be great signings for the New York Giants. Where do you land with these two players, Alex? Kevin Zeitler, Will Hernandez. I will actually throw a reminder out there. Hernandez is coming off of a season-ending injury, which is important to note. He might be ready for the start of the season. I think that he will be, but it is also something that the Giants have been picking up a few injured guys through free agency, so maybe that doesn't bother them too much.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I prefer not to because you already have an injury-prone guy, and I'd say JMS is a little injury-prone. I'd say Neal's absolutely injury-prone. I would say AT is injury-prone. Like, you need a guy with stability here. And Will Hernandez, he comes to me as a 1-year guy, like a 1-year contract. I don't think I'm comfortable giving him multiple years because of that injury. It's a 1, see how he is, and then extend him if it's good. I prefer to go Kevin Zeitler still, and I said this yesterday. Like, I think Zeitler is a great option on the marketplace because he is always healthy. This guy plays over 1,000 snaps every single season. Over the last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, over the last 10 years, Anthony, he has 1 year where he did not play over 1,000 snaps. In that 1 year, he played 991. Like, this dude is the epitome of healthy. And I really do think that is a variable you can't ignore. And he's coming from a team where the Lions, that's a balanced offense, right? They ran the ball really well, but they also passed the ball really well. So I think he comes with a lot of experience on winning teams from the Ravens, from the Lions. Like, he has been bouncing around winning ball clubs, right? And then playing well at each single space he's at. I think you bring him back on a 1-year contract and let him be that rock, that veteran guy. JMS needs a player like this next to him, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's Tevin Jenkins or a guy like Zeitler, Zeitler's going to be the healthier option. He's a bit older, absolutely, so he's going to be probably a bit cheaper. I would even sign him to a 2-year deal. Like, I actually think that this is where the Giants should be looking because they need a rock, a veteran rock who's going to be all process. Like, a guy like JMS can watch this dude train, watch how he goes about things and learn a thing or two and be like, this is how, he's worked with Frank Ragnow, like some amazing centers. I really think that that's the direction the Giants should go in. Like, I love the youth movement they have going right now, but at some point they have to look themselves in the face and say, having established rock solid veterans on your offensive line is a good thing. It's a good thing. You know what I mean? Sometimes that is a good thing to have. You don't always have to be going young and risky and upside. Like, get a rock solid right guard and then draft somebody and develop them for them to take over long term. That is how I would go about this right now because they need someone like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to my common complaint that I have of the New York Giants is that they're always drafting for need. And my fear here is that they're not going to sign someone at right guard, and they're going to have to force themselves to draft a guard in the 2nd or 3rd round sometime very early when we know they're going to be reaching based on need rather than taking the best player available. But what you're saying is fill in all of your holes through free agency, then just keep drafting the best guys that you can, and you can have them develop behind the scenes and eventually take over. That's what all the best teams do. That's what teams like the Chiefs, that's what teams like the Eagles, that's what they do. So you're really speaking to me right now, Alex, and I do appreciate that. The last candidate that I want to discuss is Shaq Mason. He was released by the Texans earlier this week, formerly of the New England Patriots as well when he was with the Patriots, Alex. I mean, guy was probably the best right guard in football for a stretch of at least 5 years. I mean, he used to be an absolute stud. Maybe not the best, but definitely one of the best. He's also stayed healthy throughout the entirety of his career. He's played less than 1,000 snaps once since his rookie season, which was in 2020. He played 780 snaps. He played 999 at right guard last year, so technically twice, but you get what I'm saying. The guy has always been healthy. He's a very good player. He had a huge drop-off, though, last season in terms of his PFF grades and his overall performance on the film as well. There is a reason that the Texans moved on from him. He's older. Again, he's a little bit washed up now at this point. He's going to be 32 this season. But I still think similar line of thinking to what you just had here with Kevin Zeitler. Guy's a rock, doesn't get hurt, has been in the league for a very long time, has been consistent and reliable. This is one of those guys that I think the New York Giants should consider because he is plug and play. There's no upside that you need to unlock. There's no if, ands, or buts. You know what you're getting with him. You're getting veteran experience, and you're getting a quality starter on the offensive line. I like Shaq Mason. I do think he makes a lot of sense for the Giants.
Yeah, me too. To me, he's a cheaper version of Kevin Zeitler, right? Because he's definitely fallen off very, very obviously. Like his numbers have kind of been zoop, like right off a cliff. So you're not going to get like the best version of Shaq Mason. You're going to get an average right guard in the NFL probably out of him at this point in time. And if the decline continues, you may get a slightly below average version of him. So, I think if the Giants want to pinch pennies at right guard, I would go with a Shaq Mason on a 1-year contract. Like that's what I would do. But if they intend, Anthony, to draft a quarterback and to sign a guy like Rodgers or Russell Wilson, and we don't know what happens with those quarterbacks just yet, but Rodgers, the narrative is that he's going to go to the Steelers. But even Russ, if you're going to go get Russ, you need to protect these guys. Like you have to protect your quarterbacks. You have to invest in that. And I think that's just good practice. So I would prefer to go Kevin Zeitler. I'd pay a little bit more just to go get the better player and a guy that, 1-year contracts, like it's fine. Like you can make it work. I would even do 2 years, like I said, for Kevin Zeitler. Fine with that. Mason, I'm only doing 1 year if I'm going in that direction. Zeitler, I would do 2. I do think that his game has fallen off quite a bit. But with that being said, like he is definitely on the board for the Giants because the truth of the matter is they need, I think, a veteran's better for them at this point in time, someone that has a lot of experience and healthy. So Mason, Zeitler, one of those two guys that I'd bet that is probably ends up being the guy they sign.
Yeah, I think so too. But of course, we'll see. Like we said, we're still waiting for the big domino to fall, and then the Giants will probably address the right guard position. It could happen before, it could happen after, but I do think, again, what they decide to do at right guard is pretty reliant on what happens to them at quarterback. So, tying into this is actually major. This just came in. I just saw the notification. The New York Jets are officially releasing Aaron Rodgers at 4 p.m. We are recording this at 3:20. To me, that indicates that a decision is imminent. So maybe we'll be doing a second episode later on today. In the midst of my hectic schedule, we will figure that out and we will try and make something happen. The last thing that I wanted to say, Alex, and this is actually not related to the right guard position. This is related to the center position, and this is something I threw out on Friday night's version of Giants Collective, and I gave this opinion to them, and I want to give it to you too and let you react to this. John Michael Schmitz is going to be a better player this season because he's going to have a quarterback that's going to call the protections for him. What's your take on that? And essentially, let me walk you through that. John Michael Schmitz has had a lot on his plate through the first 2 seasons of his career. He's been injured, as you mentioned, but he's also been dealing with just revolving doors at left guard, at right guard. The communication on the offensive line has been an atrocity for several years. No matter who the offensive line coach has been, no matter who the center has been, it hasn't mattered. It's been bad the entire time, and the constant denominator there has also been terrible quarterback play. Daniel Jones or whoever else was behind John Michael Schmitz. I think with an experienced veteran like an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson under center, John Michael Schmitz will be able to just focus on blocking. His communication with the other players on the offensive line alongside him will improve, and therefore we should absolutely see the best version of John Michael Schmitz that we've seen so far throughout his career. I'm curious to know if you agree with me, what your take on that is, and if you also see the same level potential for a breakout season from John Michael Schmitz based on whether or not the New York Giants do sign a Rodgers or Wilson or some other seriously experienced quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see a much better version of JMS. JMS is another product of the Giants' malpractice destroying any upside a player once had, right? Evan Neal was one of them. JMS is another. We can go on and on and on about players that have unfortunately been positioned to fail with coaching, with poor offensive line play, with poor quarterbacking, injury-prone players around him. I mean, I watched that kid JMS struggle a lot for the first 2 years of his career. And I watched him play next to different guards almost every week during his rookie season. And then I watched it happen again last year when they kept getting hurt too. So at what point do you just look at a player and say, yeah, you've been put in a bad spot? He is the perfect type of player the Giants end up moving on from one day. He goes on to have a better career elsewhere because the truth is you just need to position young talent in a good spot. Like, you have to have a structured situation, which is why I personally believe that going out and getting a veteran right guard is imperative, not only to JMS, but to the quarterback and to a rookie quarterback. Like, they have to invest in a good right guard and a healthy one. So I think that that's why they go with a vet there. But yeah, like, JMS will benefit tremendously from a veteran quarterback just understanding and knowing and getting rid of the ball on time and throwing with anticipation. Like, there's just so many elements to this that we have not seen a quarterback do for the Giants in like 7 years. So when we finally get that opportunity, our offensive line's going to look a lot better. Like, it's just going to be better because the ball's going to be out faster. It's going to be there on time. The pre-snap protections are going to be set. They're going to know. How many times do we see Daniel Jones just literally ignore rushers off the edge and get hit, blindsided? I watched it happen all the time where he was getting blindsided hit because he did not anticipate where rushers were coming from. Like, veteran QBs see those things coming, and they need to. So, I mean, the Colts are about to find out what Daniel Jones is. And, you know, him and Anthony Richardson, that whole battle is kind of hilarious to me. I'm like, they're whatever. Daniel Jones is what they get for freaking letting us win that game so that we can't get Cam Ward. You know, what comes around goes around. But yeah, like, I think JMS, given we get a better quarterback, a better right guard next to him, and Carmen Brasillo in second year, I think he is a better coach than Bobby Johnson was for us. I do think because, you know, before the Andrew Thomas injury, they were looking a lot better, way better than we've seen in years. So I do think that we're going to see a much better version of JMS if those things do come to fruition.
I totally agree with you. I'm glad you agree with me, actually, since I'm the one who brought up that idea and topic. But again, it's going to be very interesting. The legal tampering period is about to end, and the start of the new league year is about to become official in the next 40 minutes. So we will, of course, like I said, have another episode for you later if anything breaks. And of course, guys, make sure you're staying tuned to not only my Twitter, Alex's Twitter, but also at Fireside Giants on all social media channels, because we are posting constant updates, graphics, stats that you didn't know about all the free agent signings, all this fun stuff, highlights, everything on all of the Fireside Giants social media channels. So stay tuned. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section, leave us 5 stars if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, and again, go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.